Welcome to The Business Edge by Technologies Now, and this is a broker's perspective. And I'm joined today by James McDonald, managing partner at Magnorum Realty. James is a U.S. Army veteran who has built a strong reputation in the Dallas-Fort Worth market for his integrity, market knowledge, and investor-focused strategy. James, thanks for being here. Welcome to the show.
Well, David, thank you for having me. And man, you made me sound really good. So now I got to live up to that. So
You do. That's right. Let's see
that
if we
was
can
that
get
was a
you.
great intro, man. Listen. I may need you to come with me when I go out when I'm in front of the chamber and talk like that for me. Introduce me. That was awesome.
I think if we could always have somebody that introduces us, we'd always look better than we could ourselves. I thought about that the other day. It was pretty funny, just thinking about like what you're talking about. You've been you were the chair of the Wise Chamber of Commerce, right? If I have that correct. And
I am.
to
Yes, I
imagine
have
that.
been for the last 2 years, and I'll be again in 2020. I'm the chair also for 2026.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Fantastic. And we'll get to that, but let's do this. What brought you from the US Army into real estate? Let's hear your story if you'll share it with us, please.
Okay. Just listen, there's no straight path here. So, really, if we go all the way back originally to when I was in school, graduated high school, graduated and went on to college, proceeded to flunk out of college the first time, got kicked around a little bit, had a little bit of education, but not enough to get anywhere. Ultimately ended up in a sales career that didn't pay a lot of money. And at some point in time, I kind of got smart enough to realize, hey, listen, I need my degree. And so I was looking for ways to pay for school, help pay for school, not work full time, and I absolutely did not want to move back home. At some point in time, you get kind of used to not having your parents right down the hall, and I was still in my early 20s at the time. So that's where actually I enlisted, and I've never been, the only time I've been active duty is really on my deployment or for training purposes or something. I've always been a reserve or National Guard soldier. So that's kind of where the military came in. And then I went back to school. I finished my degree, got into sales again. Once I graduated, it seemed like the natural extension of what I've always done. I mean, I've been selling something since I was probably in third or fourth grade. Started off with a little broken watch my dad told me to take to daycare and trade it. And my dad was a horse trader. So that's kind of where that's really where it all started for me. Not sure that's the best parenting thing to do, to take a broken watch and trade for that or trade something for it. But that's where it started. But honestly, listen, I think I'm pretty good in sales, but I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing every single day. So I kind of had a come to meeting with Jesus, if you will, or come to God, or whatever you want to say. And I decided to pursue the things I really was passionate about in high school, which was teaching and coaching. So really, I went into education and retired 20 years in education 3 years ago last May. But we had owned horse stables. My dad, growing up, started where we lived, we had a horse stables. And so sixth grade is when my dad turned it over to me to run. So managing clients, collecting rent, dealing with the animals and all the responsibility, right? So by that point in time, in 2026, my dad, or not 26, but 2006, my dad passed, and I took the stables back over. I started trying to expand. We added a second horse stables up in Pilot Point. I told you my life's been a little eclectic, so we'll get there.
This is good. This is good. Thank you.
So, and so what we were doing, I had the stables. It was in Euless, Texas. Still have that today. That's still functioning. We moved there in '67. And it's a funny story. I asked my dad decades ago why we never bought the place. He said, well, I didn't think we'd live there very long. And here we are still in 2025. We're still there, right? Anyway, so we had the second location up in Pilot Point, and on a Sunday, I was driving down to meet a client to pay rent, or he was paying me rent, and I was listening to AM radio for some particular reason, and this guy comes on the radio and is talking about the 5 income streams of real estate investing. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. You don't have to know real estate. You don't have to understand the market. You just got to do the math. I'm like, well, wait a second. I'm a math teacher. That's what I taught was algebra. So now by that point in time, I'd moved into school administration. I was a middle school principal, but so I'm listening and I'm intent, and we're going. It gets done. I call my wife. I'm all excited about this, but I couldn't remember the organization that was hosting these events.
Right.
A couple weeks passes, I hear it again. I literally pull off the road, write it down. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in a seminar, basically talking about how their organization and they teach the model they teach. And so that's kind of how I started. That would have been in 2017. And so I spent all of 2017 really, I joined the organization, learned the model, took all the classes I could take, started selling things to build up our cash position so we could start investing. And so I told my brother was a real estate broker at the time. And I called him, and of course, he was going to represent me. I'm really big about family. And so I called him. I said, okay, listen, I want to do this. I want to start buying investment properties. So, but I want to start January 1st, 2018. He's like, okay, sounds like a plan. January 6th, 2018, I made my first offer. And he was like, you were serious? I'm like, yeah, I want to do this. He said, but do you know what you're doing? I'm like, hell no, I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to do it. I know it's the right move. And so we did our first deal. It was in Fort Worth. Now, let me back up a bit. The real plan was to buy and hold. We were going to do rental properties. That was what we wanted to do, my wife and I. And that was kind of, wife's very conservative, so it was really kind of a very strong, serious conversation we had to get her, convince her to let's try. And so now I got to go back to her and say, okay, we were going to buy and hold. We don't really have the cash to do that yet. We do have the cash to buy and sell. She's like, oh, we didn't talk about that.
Right.
That was not the plan. I'm like, it's still the plan. We just, instead of holding, we sell. So paid $35,000 for that first house, put $70,000 in it for rehab, and sold it for $130,000 about 4 weeks later after we finished it. Now, not everything, but a lot went wrong with that. And the biggest thing is it was supposed to take 8 weeks, and it literally took about 4 months to rehab. But we made money. Even with holding costs and all that, we made money. And so I'm like, I like this. I mean, we jokingly say my wife knew way more about construction than I do, home construction, or did, because she grew up in a family of that. Dad and I, listen, we built for horses. We built barns and fences. So horses don't care if something's plumb. They don't care if it's square.
Right.
They don't care if it's not level. So that's kind of where we started that. And we kind of kept doing that. But after that first one, I did a complete analysis from acquisition to disposition. And I'm like, okay, if I spend $1 in that vertical model there, I want to own that dollar. I want to pay me instead of necessarily me paying somebody else. So we finished that first one I call, and I'm talking to my brother. I said, let's start our own real estate agency. And he was kind of fixing to be in a transitional situation. The guy that owned his brokerage was about to retire, and I think Rick thought he was going to take his book, or was going to get his book, but what he ended up doing, he decided he was going to turn it over to his son. And so Rick's like, okay, sure, let's do it. And so 2018, we launched the brokerage. A year after that, I finally got my license. The plan with the agency was nothing more than he sell whatever he wants to sell through there. Then I'm going to sell whatever I do, my investment stuff. And it really gave me some advantages because now I control my commission side. So it helps me on the buy side. It also helps me on the sell side. If I need to make a little more money on the profit side of the sell, I don't take a commission. And so when I make a real offer, because we're not paying me commission and I'm paying closing costs, I'm controlling my costs on the front end, and that seller's getting whatever I say I'm paying them. That's what they're really getting. So that's kind of was the process. And then fast forward to I retire, and so I don't know, 2 or 3 months after I retired, I don't know what was going on. I was driving somewhere, doing something. We had already kind of built up the position to do property management because I knew eventually I would get there. And so we had that in position. So I call him and I'm like, why can't we have agents? He's like, we can. Okay, well, let's have agents. He's like, okay, let's have agents. And I'm like, well, how do we do that? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, you're the broker. How do you not know this? But he's like, that's not what we did. That brokerage he was part of was well established when he came in. And so, that the guy was managing, and that's what Rick did mostly was their property management stuff. And so they had a huge of real estate, rental properties. Most of it was their own stuff. So Rick never really had to recruit agents. So I'm like, okay, well, let me go figure this out. And so it's just such a relationship business in the first place. And so that's kind of where I started. Just started talking to my friends that I thought would make really good real estate agents. And so now here we are, like 3.5 years after the fact. We've got six agents now. Now the challenge we have is all of our agents are part-time, and all my agents, with the exception of myself and two partners, all have less than 3 years in the business. So they're really technically really new agents, right? So fast forward to this last spring of 2020, this year, Rick was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Oh.
So anyway, we went through that battle together, and then he ended up passing in June. So in our operating agreement, Rick's heirs, he's got 2 kids. They have an option. They can stay with the agency as a partner, or I can buy them out. Well, his kids are great. They're awesome, but they're like, I don't care anything about real estate. And they're like, if you don't mind. I'm like, no, absolutely. Let's get this taken care of. So I'm literally sitting after a Wise County Chamber board meeting, talking to another real estate agent friend of mine that's on the board, and then the lady who's doing our books. Well, both the chamber books, but also my business's books.
Okay.
And so we're sitting there, and I'm talking about, well, I got to get the cash to pay them, right? She goes, I'll buy a piece of your business. I'll buy some of that equity. And I hadn't talked about selling anything. And I'm like, you don't want to be in real estate. I mean, she's got a great business. I still contend it's the best name ever of a business. Cash Flow Boss is the name of the business. And so it's awesome. And she's amazing. And I'm like, so anyway, nothing else was said. We move on. That evening, wife and I were watching a little TV, and I hear a ding, got a text message. And it's her saying, I'm serious. I'll buy 10%. And she already knew, because she helped me derive the price point that I was selling to Rick's kids. She knew, actually, she marked it up a little bit. She gave me a little more than what I was paying them. So there was a little profit there. And I look at my wife and I'm like, listen, this lady's kind of got a Midas touch. Anything she gets involved in, she goes feet first and gets super engaged. I'm like, I think we'd be a fool if we don't take this. And so she's like, okay, if that's what you think. And so lo and behold, that one turned into, I'm like, well, if I'm going to sell 10%, well, listen, I might as well be all in. And so as long as I'm retaining control and still the managing partner, I'll sell a bunch more. And so we brought on, she brought on another client of hers. And then 2 of the agents, their husband-wife team, we've been talking since they joined the agency about coming in as partners. And then I got another buddy who, he's kind of one of the guys I go to when I hit a spot that I'm stuck on the real estate side. He's one of the guys I make a phone call to.
Got it.
And so now he's joined. And so the upside of that is it gives us a cash position to now get serious about growing the agency. And really, we have 2 main goals we want to do. We want to increase GCI, and none of this is rocket science, right? We want to increase the amount of money we make,
right?
Which is really increase our GCI per agent, which means we need to increase our agents' production. And then we want to add more agents. So that's kind of our 2 main goals. And so that's what we've been in a mode of building or preparing systems, processes to make sure that by the time we get into 2026, we're launched. Everything's rolling. All the bugs are worked out of it. So the first thing we did, we basically built a brand new website, hired somebody to build a brand new website. Then we also added a very robust CRM that's fully integrated into that website. And then just yesterday, I agreed to hire a company. They're going to come in and automate all of our drip campaigns and our text messages through that CRM. And they've got vast experience doing this. And so in fact, they got really excited when I told them who did our website, because they're like, well, that's who we recommend. So we're building all that. And so over the last few weeks, even myself, I've spent a lot of time building systems, our training model, our scripts, our SOPs, refining all of that so we can make sure our agents are as successful as they possibly can. And in fact, I do some of this tomorrow, our first round of training with regards to what we're calling our business roadmap for our agents to help them really take, here's my 10-year plan, here's my 5-year plan, and here's my 1-year plan, or really vision, and then start crafting what it's going to take to accomplish those. Again, not rocket science. Stuff's been done for years and decades, right? But we've kind of made it ours. We turned it into
Yep.
our language, our tone.
Your culture.
And yeah, and that's it. I mean, because we're very much, if you go back and look at my history, it's very service oriented between the military, education, the chamber stuff I do. It's very service oriented. Brian and Angie Taylor, the couple, the partners, I met Angie. There's a funny story here, but I won't go too far into it. My
Okay.
superintendent decided one year, Tag, you're going to be a half day elementary assistant principal. Although I was already a director of college and career readiness, now I'm going to go to the elementary and spend a half a day dealing with those little kids. And I've always been a secondary teacher or above, right? So it's middle school or
Right.
higher. And so, but that's how I met Angie. Angie was a second grade teacher at the time. So again, community service, service oriented mindset. The first agent I recruited was Krista Barber. I had her two oldest boys as middle school principal, and her oldest son is like 26 now. In fact,
Wow.
Trace was in the very first group of seventh graders that I had when I took over Boyd Middle School. Well, she's been, if there's a board in Boyd, Texas, if there's a board, whether it's youth sports or wherever, she's been on it. And she's now a school board member there. And so, again, very service oriented, very community oriented. And it's just kind of it's really our culture. And I want to continue that because I firmly believe, and I think this in most areas, but especially in real estate, when you solve problems, you're going to build relationships. You're going to be successful. You're not, I don't want to be the transactional guy. Hey, let me move this house for you. And then when you need to move another one, you call me. That's not what I want to do. Even yesterday when I was on the video conference with the lady who was basically she was pitching the technology company to do the automated drip campaigns. She brought up real estate investing. Of course, I light up and start talking about it and start
Yes.
giving her details. She said, well, I really would like to do that. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that. And so so I got into that. And she's like, I can tell you like that and you like helping. And I really do. And it's kind of one of the things, even early on when I was in sales, it was the part I loved was the helping part. Now, don't get me wrong. I like commissions. I
Right.
like getting a commission check. But really for me, it was helping somebody. So that's really where my joy came, which is why the classroom was so fantastic for me. And then when I moved up into school administration, by extension, I'm still helping the classroom, but now I'm helping the adults who's helping the kids. So
Right.
it's just been my mindset. Where it came from, I don't know. Dad was a truck driver, and my mom was essentially cleric. I mean, she was a clerk kind of. She worked for God. What was her title? Well, I guess she got into technology towards the end. Really, she started off at the company as a secretary. Mom had some college. Dad never got past ninth grade, but somehow they raised this kid who at 10 years old, when we're moving from one house to another, I'm asking my mother, hey, why didn't we do a lease to own? And she's like,
Right. That's great. Yes.
where'd that come from? I don't know. I just think it's the right thing to do. Why don't we do a lease to own? Now, where did I get that idea? I have no clue. I really don't. Because it's not, dad loved horses. So if dad was getting into a long conversation, it had something to do with a horse, whether it was breeding or training or food and nutrition. That's when he would get into serious conversations. Mom didn't get into in-depth conversations because she was all about just taking care, working and enjoying life and doing things as we did as a family. So I don't know where the business ideas came from. It just did.
Well, I think the fact that you actually heard, your kind of your next calling about real estate investing, on the radio, you're obviously listening and observing and taking things in, and you have a different filter than, maybe your parents did. That's what it sounds like to me. And then you act on it.
Well, yes. And so, it's funny when I finally finished my first degree, almost 10 years after the fact that when I started it, I remember thinking, I am not going to ever go back to the schoolhouse. I am not, because that
Wow.
bachelor's degree
Right.
just kicked my butt.
Mm.
And lo and behold, I end up somehow this growth mindset stuck. And so I not only went back and got a bachelor's, I got my master's. And then I even went and did 18 hours towards towards my doctorate so I could get my superintendent certification. And then I even, for a brief time before I retired, I thought about going back and getting a master's in accounting because I'm a numbers guy. And this was before real estate. I kind of thought, well, listen, I really enjoyed accounting in my bachelor's program. So I thought about going to get that master's in accounting, become a CPA, and then I could do school financing or school finance auditing with some company. For that was kind of where I was thinking about going, but I took one accounting class back for at the master's level. I'm like, yeah, no, it's been too long. It's been too long, and so I
Yes. Got to
didn't.
start
But
over and get back into it.
well, there's that, and then obviously, I had a destiny someplace else too, which is probably why it didn't work out. But listen, I think we're all byproducts of where we've been in our life. It shaped me into the guy I am today. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but it is what it is. So, you know,
Let's argue it's a good thing right now.
well, listen, right, that's my perspective for sure.
Okay, good. Good.
Yeah, I think I promise you, my wife would probably argue at times that I'll drive her nuts. As
There's
my
always
daughter
times.
will, yes, and my daughter will absolutely say, yeah. Listen, sometimes dad gets a little over the top. She jokingly says that at 90 years old, I'll be still running out of the house trying to go do some kind of deal or negotiate or chase something. And she's going to have to be pulling me back in. And I'm like, okay, I hear it now. You're already planning on putting me in a nursing home. I hear it. So anyway,
Should run fast. Run fast is all I can say.
that would be the plan.
Yes, that is awesome. Thank you for sharing that, James. That's really cool. Hey, we are a technology company, so I want to take you back to where you have seen technology change from the past and into the future, and maybe why you think technology is so important for your company right now.
Now on that side, I've always been an early adapter. I go all the way back when I went back to finish up my degree. I was taking technology. Now, listen, when I started my degree, we were doing punch cards, right? In the 80s, we still did computers with punch cards. But by the time I went back and was finishing, Windows was on 3.1.
Right?
Yes. So I'm sure anybody that knows Windows well enough knows I just dated myself extremely in the early 90s.
You did.
But
Around
I
11.
saw the value of technology early, very much early, but it's evolving faster and faster and faster. Not that that's really shocking, because I remember in the 80s talking about we've done more in the last 20 years than we had done in the last 80 years prior, because it was already moving faster. But for me, one of the biggest things that's changed rapidly in the last year and a half is really AI. Integrating AI, and I tell my agents all the time, if you're not using it, you're already behind. You're just so far behind. But we're still probably not where, like I haven't got an AI that kind of integrates all my platforms and stuff. I just kind of got started introduced to that. But I deal with AI every single day. It controls my life. My wife laughs at me because I argue with it. Yes, I'll have a conversation. I've named it. That's probably a little over the top, but Atlas and I have conversations first thing in the
Atlas.
morning.
Got it.
Atlas, yes. Hey, listen, I said, hey, I think you need a name. I'm tired of saying it. And he said, well, here's some suggestions. I'm like, okay. And I stuck with Atlas. So, listen, it's just a part of what you do every day. It just makes you faster, more efficient, more effective. And the things that I'm not good at, like for instance, grammar, spelling, it makes me look really good.
Does very
So,
well.
but even now, it's the stuff I've produced over the last 2 weeks with training manuals, SOPs, the scripts that we're writing. I wouldn't have been able to do any of that in this kind of time frame if I didn't have. And I actually have two. I do Chat GPT is who I use mostly. That's my heavy lifting one. And then I have another one called Jasper that I use that's really kind of a marketing AI that helps me refine our social media post. So, but it's just, listen, I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where you get so used to it, you kind of go, how did people live without it? You know?
Yes.
But even the CRM in our website, to be able to capture, our website was 2 days old. The new website was live 2 days. And it's our generator, well, my first client and my first multi-million dollar land listing.
That's excellent.
So, yeah, oh yeah. So I was almost like, I'm not knocking on wood. I'm not sure this is real, but it is. So, but to think about, of course, you got to go all the way back. When you go back in the 90s and I was in sales, we had a CRM. It literally was a 3x5 box, card box, right? And you had, and this is what I got trained. You had a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You had 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week. You had January, February through December, right? And so you take your 3x5 card, you put your client's name on there, their business, because I was business to business. You put that and then you make your notes on it, right? And then I want to call them back on Friday. So I put it behind my Friday tab and you just keep rolling like that. So,
Yes.
so to
It
be
works.
able to do it, yeah, exactly. Very efficient and very effective. Now it's automated and it does it highly more effective. And now with our CRM, it can take out having the conversation, shooting the emails. It can craft all of that and shoot those out and keep you, and especially in real estate, you want to be present of mind. It can take care of all of that for you. And all you have to do is when the lead comes in with a response, you just have to categorize it. Amazing. Those are amazing tools now. I'm like, listen, let me tell you, in the 90s, if I'd have had that, yeah, maybe I wouldn't have got into education because I'd have probably been crushing that. Because just because of, I mean, we would literally back then, we come in at 6 on a Friday and I might be there another 3 hours just taking care of all the paper, reports and stuff, but also, which is another thing, all that was analog. You know, write all your reports by hand and then get your book caught up. It's a, you know, people that weren't in the sales in the 80s and the 90s just don't understand how sweet they have it right now. So, because that can all be automated.
That's amazing. And just wait until your AI is working all with, throughout your CRM. The potential is really it's limitless. Even the AI voice outreach has gotten pretty good, at this
Yeah.
point, which seems a little strange. But yeah, these all work. So this is just the beginning. You're gonna be able to outreach in your own voice if you want to. It's creepy when you first
No,
hear
and
it, but then you get used to it.
but that's the thing that's really cool. And that's the thing I tell my agents, early on when AI would write something for me, it sounded like AI. Now when it writes up, because I've trained it enough, we've chatted enough, it's given enough parameters. It writes in my language. It writes with my voice, my tone, and it will refine it more. Hey, do you want to be more authoritative today? Do you want to be a little more friendly? Do you want this professional? It'll ask me questions because that's the other thing I've taught it, because it likes to assume, or at least ChatGPT does, it likes to
Right.
assume what you want and it starts filling that. And I'm like, dude, don't
Good luck.
assume stuff for me. Don't listen. If you want to know something, ask me. Otherwise,
Don't
I'm
limit
going to direct
yourself.
you. Yeah,
Right.
and that's it. Because it can process so much stuff and it'll throw so much at you at one time. It's tough to really sift through it and figure out well, I like that piece, but no, I don't like that piece. And so I'm like, let's slow this down a little bit because I am 61, fixing to be 62. I don't process things as fast as I used to, but it just still boggles my mind. Listen, we cranked out, what did we do? The scripts alone, we did that in a day, less than a day. And it's a 31-page manual now that has 5 or 6. I think we've got 7 areas that we covered, and each one of those has 5 or 6 scripts, including, okay, here's what you do, here's how you establish rapport, here are the typical objections, here's the response to those objections. So, and it will take our agents, it will make them feel comfortable because not everybody is a natural salesperson. Not everybody is going to understand what to respond. When David says ABC, I'm going to know just somewhat instinctively, but because of my experience, I'm going to know how to
Right.
respond. But not everybody has that experience to draw back on or have that natural sense. So, but that's where AI came in. I quickly created a tool that will far benefit my employees, or not employees, but my agents, than what the time it took me to build it. It's such a value add. So, which is awesome. Anytime I can do something that doesn't really cost me more money and it adds value, man, I love that, which is kind of our same approach on investment properties. We're always looking to, when we buy, we want to be able to value add to that house what we could possibly make on it.
No, it makes sense. And what is your approach on investment properties? How do you look at it? Is it all numbers? Hopefully, it's all numbers, maybe because it's an investment property, or are you doing other research in the area? Are you still flipping? Or are you holding? Or what's your strategy currently? Does
Last
it
three
does it depend on
years,
your clients?
really the last 3 years we've been in a hold mode. But it's funny you brought that up because we just had that conversation earlier in the week. I've got one more investment property we're fixing to sell probably right after the first of the year. And we were discussing, my wife and I were discussing, I kind of was like, well, I want another income producing property. She's like, well, I'm like, what's that about? She said, I think I want to flip. I'm like, really?
She's changed.
Well, because she loves it. She has really seen the value. So honestly, and it's kind of cool because well, first place, you can make more because single family rentals don't generate a big profit margin, right? So, but you can certainly make more. And then, but every house we've ever, well, after the first four or five, every house after that, we kind of always would walk in and look at from both models, right? Can we, is the best route to go, is this a flip or is this a rental? Because the remodel's a little different of the two. We're going to, on the flip, we're going to be a little bit, we may spend a little bit more on that remodel than what we would do on a rental. The rental's going to get, because we do our stuff that we do is entry level homes, first time buyer homes, that kind of thing. We're very much in that beginner 250 to 350 kind of range, and that's where I like that. It's the biggest buyer pool. Now it's also the one that's been hit the hardest with the economy in the sense of them being able to buy, but it also is the largest buyer pool. So I like that. So we're not spending a ton of money. A lot of the things we do is builder grade. However, we're going to do a little bit of a nicer finish with that flip to make it pop, whereas a rental property just needs to look nice, right? Clean, fresh. Very not, we don't do a lot with color schemes. We're pretty consistent, but a rental property, I may paint the whole entire inside just white, satin white, top, the ceiling, everything. But whereas a flip, I'm going to do a flat, I'm going to do a satin on the wall, and then I'll do a semi-gloss on the trim and the baseboards.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's little things like that that's the biggest difference. But yeah, she was like, yeah, I think I want to flip again. And I'm like, okay, well, let's look at it. If we can find the right property, I'm all about it. So,
Yeah,
so that's kind of where we're at right now.
so it's been a great story. Kind of your path has been very interesting. So, based on that, what advice do you give someone coming into either take this two different ways, maybe either coming into their own career or maybe specifically into real estate? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think doesn't really matter which direction you're going. I think I would say probably the same thing. There are things in my life growing up that I regret, and I regret them because I didn't do them. And so I tried to raise my own kids. Do not have that fear of regret. Don't regret. Don't have regrets.
Don't have
You
regrets.
may be afraid to do something, but don't let fear control you. Same thing applies here. If you want to try, you should. You may not be successful, but there's learning and growing that happens through failure. Just like that first house, I didn't know what I was doing. I was relying on a contractor to tell me what the rehab budget, which he missed totally because
Oh
ultimately he
no.
was really selling me because he wanted the deal. But that's okay. I learned to grow. I now know what kind of contractor he is. I know how to manage him if I need to manage him. And plus, I got better at being able to budget, right? Being able to project what those repairs are going to be. But there's just don't let fear control you. That would be my biggest advice I would give to anybody, whether it's real estate or whether it's career. Do the things you need to try to do the things you want to do. I had, I won't lie, before I got into education, I'd gotten laid off. I was with a company out of Arlington selling big equipment, street sweepers and stuff like that. And I got laid off, and I was unemployed for about a year and a half because I was really frustrated. I didn't want to go back into sales, and trying to find something that was really fit me was tough. It was hard to find. And, I had kind of talked to my wife about going it. First wife, let me clarify here. The wife I have now is not the wife I had then. I kind of thought about then because I was doing a lot of youth stuff through both youth sports and youth at our church. And so I kind of knew I was kind of being led that direction to go into teaching and education and coaching. And I talked to her about it at the time, and she was like, "Oh, no, 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 that's a lifestyle change. You got to go back to school. You got to do this and you got to do that. And then teachers don't make anything." And I'm like, okay. Fast forward a year and a half, and I actually got a really good sales job offer with Nabisco. It was a great offer, but driving home, we were going to have to move to East Texas, and not that that would have been bad, but coming home, I just well, and that's what I realized. Driving home, that's not where I was supposed to be. And the next day, I was talking to an old coach. The next day after that, 2 days after me coming home from that trip, I was subbing my first day, and that was I felt like this is where I'm supposed to be. So that not having a fear of trying to get there, and I just needed her to get to past her fear. That led me down that path. And I'm telling you, I know I wouldn't have been here where I'm at right now if I hadn't got into education. And you kind of go, how do you get from education to real estate? Because things get presented in front of you and you choose to take them or you don't choose to take them. And I just did. I mean, listen, I'm not sure how I worked a full-time job as a school administrator, which is definitely 24/7 job, and still did all the real estate on the side because it was strictly at night and on the weekends. But man, I love it. And once I retired, I was like, this is cool because I kind of really know what my next thing was going to be.
Yeah, you did.
So, and that's kind of that's how we got to where we're at. But so back to your original question, don't let fear control you. That would be and that's kind of a negative. You shouldn't put things in a negative framework, but that would be it. Don't let fear control you.
Yeah, so we could just say, I have no fear. I mean, you want to put in a positive framework,
Well,
but I think that's fantastic advice.
but fear is okay. Having it's not the problem. It's allowing it to control you. I guess that's really the better way for it. Don't let fear control you or control fear. Maybe there's the positive. You should control your own fear. Yes. Something. I don't know.
Well,
it's a good thing I'm not an English major.
Math is right up your alley. Yes, this is true. Or I've heard before, feel the fear, but do it anyway. So there's a million quotes out there if you want to find one that fits you, right?
Well, George Patton, being an armor guy, that's what I was in the Army. I was in tanks. So General Patton is obviously any guy that's an armor guy, that is their hero, right? He has a quote that I have somewhere up on one of my walls. Well, it's up. Well, you can't see it, but it's over there. It talks about all fear are frightened. All men are frightened. The more educated, the more intelligent they are, the more frightened they are. But the real man, I don't like that term, but the real man step up and tackle her with courage. God, I'm missing the thing. You still step up and carry on, essentially. But he talks about all men are frightened. Period at the end. I mean, that's just it. You're going to be. But you've got to still step up because the job still needs to get done. The mission needs to happen. Or in this case, you want to pursue a career that you want.
Yeah,
absolutely. You can't let fear have its way.
And with that, James, we're going to wrap up. Can you tell everybody where they can find out more about your company?
Sure. We're on almost all the social medias, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We've got a YouTube channel, but they can find us at magnorumrealty.com. That's our website. I'm certainly J McDonald at magnorumrealty.com is my email. They can message me on Facebook. I'm not that hard to find. I'm honestly in where I live, there's probably 80% of the people that live in my county probably have my phone number just because either through chamber or I was their principal or I was their coach or something, right? So my phone number's out there. Yeah, but right. magnorumrealty.com, that's our website. You can always get to us through there. So
excellent. And then James, thank you for sharing your story and your insights. We definitely appreciate that. And he provided ways you can connect with him. And this has been The Business Edge by Technologies Now, a broker's perspective. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, David.
Easier and smarter than us. And
yes,
we'll be good at what we're good at, which is people.
Yes, sir. That's I agree. So, all right. Well, I look forward to talking next week.
Yeah, sounds good, James. All right.
All right, David.
Have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you then.
All right. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.